trauma disconnects us. Trauma and stress disconnects us from the body. And so then we are just living on autopilot. We're not present. We're not engaged. We're not actively involved in our life. When we are present in our body, we're making decisions based on, what is best for us, because we are listening to that wisdom within. We are following our intuition, and we trust ourselves. With trauma, trust kind of disappears. And so when you connect back to your body and you realize, wow, my body really is speaking to me, and it's so wise, then you develop that trust within yourself.
I'm your host, Brandy Fleck, and this is Human Amplified. This is a show about our existence, our place in the world, what it all means, and ways to make it better. From big picture ideas that blow your mind to practical life advice, we explore it all. We amplify the voices of healers, survivors, mystics, disruptors, scientists, creatives, and everyday people like you and me to expand our consciousness and use that awareness to evolve into who we really want to be in the depths of our soul. Humans Amplified. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy this episode, please go rate and review the show. And remember to subscribe where you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Support for this podcast comes from Bed of Nails. You've probably seen acupressure products before, maybe in your Facebook feed or something like that. It could be for any number of brands, but it's a fact that the Bed of Nails is the Swedish original. I've been using the Bed of Nails mat and pillow since 2012. I personally remember when no other products were widely available and when I was scared to even try it. When you lay on it at first, it can get a little uncomfortable, but that's short-lived. After a few minutes, your back gets warm, starts pulsing, and then starts to relax. You quickly get used to distributing your weight on the Bed of Nails, and it's nothing but a welcomed reprieve from a stressful day. Over the years, it's helped me increase circulation, relax, and reduce pain in my back and neck. I also use my Bed of Nails every single time I meditate, and I love it. If you feel like you would like to do the same, you can shop my Bed of Nails affiliate link to get yours. I have put that link in the show notes of the episode, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can find it in the description of this video. And there is also a discount code there for you where you can get 15% off at checkout. So be sure to go get it. For the links mentioned throughout this episode, check the description box on YouTube or the show notes at humanamplified.com/episodes/132. What does being human mean to you?
Such a simple question, yet so complex, right? Because I think being human, we're born human and we all come into this world with this amazing innate wisdom. And then we start to live and have experiences. And it's in those experiences that it shapes the human that we become, right? And so I think being human is about our experiences. And then as a result of those experiences, what kind of human do we turn into, right? And so it's all about, we have basic needs, survival needs, but we also have the need for attachment and authenticity. And I think when those two needs, if they are met, we're able to flourish as humans. When there is an attachment wound, we often abandon our authenticity. And so we lose touch with that innate wisdom that we were born with as humans. And instead we seek attachment. And so I think being human is about your experiences and your connection to yourself and your connection to other people.
Wow, I have full body chills. I love that answer. All right, everyone. Today I am excited to introduce you to Amy Pagett. She is owner of Aim True Coaching based in Ontario, Canada, and she combines science, spirituality, and her own trauma healing experience to support others through trauma recovery and post-traumatic growth. She's a certified trauma-informed coach, breathwork coach, somatic practitioner, and a Reiki master. She uses her Bachelor of Science degree in psychology, somatic embodiment, and breathwork to help her clients befriend their nervous systems and bodies, creating new healthy patterns. So, Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I am excited. I'm so excited to have you here. And just for our listeners' sake, you guys, we met, we were both going through our trauma informed coaching program together. So we get to catch up and talk about some really interesting things today. So, Amy, just what else would you like listeners to know about who you are and what you do?
Mhm. So I am also an elementary school teacher. So I teach full time and I teach library and phys ed and drama, dance, and music, which I love because it's really so many of those things are really tapping into the creativity of students. And I think creativity is an excellent way to heal. So I really love my job. I love that I can, and I also greet kids at such a different level. Kids are able to be successful in the subjects that I teach. A lot of kids that can't be successful in other levels and other areas. And so I'm an elementary school teacher and I'm also a mom. I have 3 kids and I'm a wife. And for me, I have my own trauma background. And I really did a lot of healing by learning. So I learned a lot, I learned about breath work and then became a breathwork coach. And I learned about somatics and that helped me. And so just really taking all of that learning and experience and then using that to help other people.
I love that. And I know you sent me a little bio before we got on this call, and you mentioned curiosity and how there's just similarities between teaching and healing. And so I
Mm.
think that's awesome.
Yeah, and kids are so attuned to that curiosity, right? And wonder. That's how they explore the world. And I think that when we tap back into that as adults, that curiosity and wonder is also going to aid in our healing.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll get into that a little more. I'm not sure. I'm excited to see what this has in store for us. And I know we're going to start talking about breath work first. And I think people just don't think about breathing. They don't really have to think about it because it's an automatic function of life. It keeps us alive. And it's almost like we need air more than we need any other thing for survival. We go longer without food, water, shelter than we can go without air. And so, what are your observations about breathing in general? And can breathing be self care?
I think that definitely breathing can be self care because there's different types of breathing that can tap into different parts of your nervous system. So, you can do breath work to activate your sympathetic nervous system, or you can breathe to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And so, depending on what you want to do, if you wanted to exercise, then you'd probably want to do your sympathetic, which is your fight or flight. And if you wanted to relax, then you really want to do breathing that taps into that parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. And the biggest thing with breathing is just being aware, right? As you said, we don't really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But when we befriend our breath, then we can really learn a lot about ourselves. So if you've experienced trauma, a lot of people, their breath is right here. It doesn't go deep. It's often very shallow and it's often very fast. And sometimes you even hold your breath, right? And so I would say your breath is a powerful tool that is always with you. And so the first thing would be that self-awareness of your breath. What are you noticing? Just taking time to notice. Wow, I think I am feeling a little bit stressed right now. My breathing is fast. And then just mindfully slowing it down.
What are some habits that I know you mentioned some, like if you've had trauma, your breath is here and it can be sort of shallow. What are some other habits you've noticed that people just get into with their breath?
Well, I think the big thing with breath is in order to optimize your breathing, you really should be breathing through your nose, not your mouth. So when I talk to people about breathing, I say your nose is for breathing, your mouth is for eating. And when we breathe through our nose, we allow our body to relax and we're more able to connect, and to that parasympathetic state. And so it's really important to be breathing through our nose. And then to just really optimize, we talk a lot about, carbon dioxide is bad, but we need both. We need a balance of carbon dioxide and oxygen in order to
Mm,
breathe.
okay.
So if you're breathing really fast, then you have less carbon dioxide. So there's not a balance, right? And so that's when you're like hyperventilating. And so it's really about creating that balance and extending the breath, slowing it down can create that balance.
Even
Yeah.
as we're sitting here talking about it, I'm like, I feel myself being like, how am I breathing? What am I doing?
Yeah. And so it's again just with that curiosity piece, right? And not shame or judgment, just curiosity and wonder. Huh, how am I breathing right now? Can I slow that down just a little bit more?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when as you inhale, your belly should rise. And then as you exhale, your belly should fall. And a lot of people do that the opposite, right?
That's so
Inhale and
true.
suck in. And so it's really just, even just putting your hand on your belly. And as you inhale, your belly should rise. And as you exhale, your belly should fall. And just practicing those little things
Yeah.
to just develop that awareness of your breath. I think that's the biggest thing, the awareness.
Yeah. Why do you think people start to suck in their bellies when they breathe? Because I feel like as babies and children, we don't breathe that way. So I'm like, what makes that change?
Again, it's those experiences, right? When we think about like sucking in, that's, we're bracing our body, bracing for what is going to happen. There's a threat.
That makes a lot of sense.
And so, yeah, that's the first thing I say to clients is really let's just notice the breath.
Well, Amy, so I had a really strange habit develop as a child around breathing, and I have not told really anyone outside of my family about this, but because you are an expert in breath work, I'm sort of embarrassed, but I want to tell you about it and see what you have to say about it.
Well, the
Be-
first thing is don't be embarrassed.
Okay.
This is a safe space. You can share whatever.
Sure. Well, so around 6 years old, I had a single mom and we were in a situation where we had moved away from my grandparents and all the rest of my family that I had been with since I was born. And my soon to be stepdad was going to be moving in with us. So it was a huge transition on lots of different fronts. And my mom told me that he had diabetes. And I was like, what's that? And she's like, well, it's a disease that some people get, and she explained it. At 6 years old, I had no idea how you caught it, that you can't just catch it from somebody. And I started doing this thing where I would blow out to keep the germs away from me because I was so riddled with anxiety that like I was going to get sick and I was going to die, which is funny because back then, we didn't have a lot of it didn't seem like we had a lot of airborne illnesses like we do post-COVID now, where like when breathing is actually like the way you catch it. But, so I would like go, and it became almost like this compulsion, this nervous compulsion that I carried with me well into my early adulthood, and I could not stop. And I'm at a point now where I don't really do it anymore. But what in the world? What?
Yeah. I mean, I would say our bodies are really amazing, right? Because your body was responding in service of protection, right? You saw a threat.
Mhm.
You didn't really understand the threat, but your body recognized that there was a threat there. And so it was responding to that threat, right? And that threat was to just blow it out, get rid of it. And so interesting too, because, that blowing out would activate like that sympathetic nervous system. So it probably became like this cycle of, activation of that fight or flight, and then thinking about, oh, I could catch this, right? So this cycle of continuous stress,
Mm,
you
yeah.
know, and your body responding to that stress and as a child, right, we don't really understand things. There isn't the cognitive ability to understand. And so our body takes over. And so I would say, in a way, that what an amazing thing. You were afraid and your body responded to that fear in the best way that it knew how. And essentially in service of protection, right? Your
Yeah.
body was protecting you.
That's a really nice perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, as I got older and I was able to process some of that habit and that compulsion, I mean, it took a lot to turn it around and to stop it. One thing it had done, a side effect of it, was my breath was so shallow that when I started doing breath work, say in the last 5 years or so, it was almost like my lungs, they just weren't used to being filled so deeply. It was very interesting.
And probably didn't feel safe, right? You adopted that out of survival and protection. And so when we try and change the strategies that we adopted to keep us safe and protected, it feels really unsafe to change them.
That's a good point. Well, when you're working with clients who maybe are more used to shallow breathing, is there an adjustment period for them to be able to breathe deeply and to breathe with their belly going out? What is that adjustment period like, if there is one?
Yeah, definitely there is one. And it's called like that breath hunger, right? Where we just feel like we don't have enough breath. And and it's just slowly getting comfortable, changing the breathing. And, when I do like extending the exhale, a lot of times that can be really difficult for people, like to exhale for a count of 8. And they're like, oh, I can't do it. I can't, I can't let it all out that slow. And again, it's that slowing down piece, right? And knowing that you don't have to be perfect right away. It's like anything, it takes practice. And your body has to learn to feel safe with this practice. It's with anything within our body, we can't do too much too soon, or it's going to feel overwhelming and not safe.
Mhm.
And so it's just easing in to whatever the practice is.
That's a really good point. I hadn't planned on asking you this, but if you care to share, what role did breath play in your own healing journey?
For me, it was huge. I really held my breath a lot. My brother actually suffocated to death. That's how he died. And so that was a big part of my own trauma, and I would hold my breath so much. And I think I held my breath in the moment that, that happened. And so much of my trauma was surrounded with my breath,
Mm.
in holding my breath and, just also being on guard all the time and being worried all the time. And, and I wasn't even really aware that I was doing it. And so it was creating that awareness that, oh, yeah, you are holding your breath. You are on guard all the time. And so again, it's that befriending, you know, and as I learned to befriend my breath and then understand it and understand how I could actually use this amazing tool that I have wherever I go, to help me calm and center and be present.
So, breath can be a tool to calm, center, and be present.
Mm-hmm.
What else does it do for us?
Well, I think it keeps us alive, right? And it helps us, most importantly, and it can help us to regulate our nervous system, right? And even also identifying where our nervous system is sitting. I don't know if you're familiar with the nostril test, the nasal
Mm-mm.
cycle test. Yeah. So you just take your hand and exhale onto your hand through your nose and just notice which nostril is more dominant. You don't need to tell me if you don't want to. And then if it's your left, your body is in a parasympathetic state. If it's your right, your body's in a sympathetic state. Now, a healthy nervous system is going to fluctuate, right? Throughout the day. You're going to fluctuate between those states. An unhealthy one is going to get stuck. So you're going to get, for me, I was stuck in fight or flight for a really long time. I took that threat from my childhood and always anticipated that there was going to be another threat, right? So I was always in that fight or flight stage. But some people are stuck in that parasympathetic dorsal state, which is that shutdown state. And so you can use your breath to attune to your body. And where are you sitting within your nervous system?
That is so cool. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I had never heard of that before. When I did it initially, it was the left side was more dominant.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
all right. Do you know how much it's supposed to fluctuate?
I think I don't know for sure, but I think every 20 minutes, usually it kind of shifts.
Okay. Well, that would
Mhm.
be good to test out. I might actually try that sometime and just sort of see what happens.
Yeah. And obviously, if you're doing like some sort of exercise, then you're probably going to be in that sympathetic activation.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the heightened side of
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's your fight or flight.
Well, let's pivot into the topic of somatics for a bit too. So, can you just tell our listeners a little bit about what that is and is breathwork related?
Yeah. So somatics, the word soma in Greek means body. And so it's really connecting to your body and connecting to that. There is innate wisdom within you. So whenever a client comes to me, you don't need fixing, right? There's nothing to fix. You are whole as you are. There is just a disconnect from that wisdom within. And so it's really paying attention to not only how you're feeling, but the sensations in your body. And also, how you're responding to the external world, how you're responding to your internal world, and how they are connected. And breathwork is definitely part of that because, our breath is inside our body, right? And so our breath is this amazing tool that allows us to kind of go within. And it's developing that felt sense in the body. We are born with that felt sense, knowing, our intuition and really connected to ourselves. And trauma disconnects us from that, or stress. And so as a somatic practitioner, I'm really teaching people to listen to their body and to just really acknowledge what's happening within. And a lot of times we need to complete the stress cycle. So often we feel stress and we hold it all in. And with somatics, we kind of explore, where is the stress in your body? Where are you holding it? And how can we release that so that, you're not stuck in that stress all the time?
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Do you have an example of a specific stressor that would cause stress to then need to be completed? And like, what would they do to complete that stress cycle?
So it's really about, first of all, resourcing within yourself and noticing, okay, so a stressor could be, family, job, anything like that. And so we cannot change things until we develop a relationship with it. So often our response is, I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to avoid it. Somatics is about going in and developing a relationship with the stressor,
Mm,
which can feel really, really overwhelming at first, right? So it is, again, that kind of dipping our toes in, exploring, and then, going out, that titration of getting in contact with the stressor and then, allowing ourselves a break time. And for some clients, we can't get into that stressor right away. That's too overwhelming. For some, it's just, I'm going to explore the felt sense. And for others, they can complete the whole stress cycle of, being aware of it and then mobilizing it. So moving it throughout the body. And so it's really paying attention to your client. What is their capacity? Right? Because you never want to do too much too soon with somatics.
Mhm.
That's just going to feel really overwhelming.
Okay.
And so noticing the capacity of the client to have a relationship with the stress. Maybe at the beginning, it is just to even acknowledge the sensations that they feel in their body when they think about that stressor.
And then to complete it, I heard you say, move it through the body.
Mm-hmm.
How would they?
Yeah, that can come in different ways,
Okay.
right? Moving your body around, running or screaming, making noises.
Ooh.
Yeah. So anything that feels right for you in that moment. And so somatics is not scripted, right? It's really me paying attention to the client and being attuned to them and using my own intuition to kind of guide them as to where they need to go next. So
Okay.
sometimes it is a sound. Sometimes it's, moving around or offering some sort of containment for the stressor, so holding a pillow or if they want to, or even punching a pillow and really just getting attuned to them and where do they need to go with this in this moment.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. It's like, the story where you're being chased by a lion or a bear or something like that. And it's in that example, in the olden days, you run to sort of complete the stress cycle, I guess. And then
Mhm,
when the danger is gone, you stop and your body can resume its normal activity.
mhm,
Whereas in today's world, some of the stressors just seem so never ending. It's like, how do you break that cycle of stress in the first place?
mhm. And I again would say it's that relationship to the stress,
Oh, okay.
right? Creating a relationship with it. How is it showing up in my body? What do I do? Because we want to run, we want to avoid, and then it just all piles up.
Yeah.
And so it's really creating a relationship with it and noticing how it's impacting your body.
I had a client the other day, and
Mhm.
I'm not going to give any identifying details or anything like that. But this is interesting because she came to me for Reiki. And
Mhm.
so you're a Reiki master, but you're also a somatic practitioner and breathwork practitioner, which I am not. So
Mhm.
I am so curious to hear how you might have handled this situation. She stood out to me because she was tremoring. I mean, her hands were shaking, her legs were shaking, and all of her neurological tests have come back normal. So she's like, I think it's just stress. I think it's stress. Maybe Reiki can help me relax. And I didn't encourage her to talk about what was stressing her out, but if she did start talking about it, she would shake more.
Mhm.
And the type of Reiki I practice is light hands on if the client is okay with that and gives me permission. And she did. And as I would do that, she would also shake a little more. So I would back off. And I just thought she needs a somatic practitioner. So from your perspective, what is happening with her nervous system and what should her next step be?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I can't see her, so I can't, connect. But I think, it sounds as if her body's doing exactly what it needs to do. Same as with you in that breathing pattern, right?
Hmm.
It's that her body is likely in some sort of sympathetic activation and is trying to mobilize this stress in the body, right? And shaking is a way, animals do that too. It's a way to get it out,
Hmm.
right? But then there it is. It sounded like she wanted to get rid of it.
Hmm.
And it's that befriending it. Huh. I wonder why this is coming up. When does this happen for me? What happens right before? is there anything in my body that tells me it's going to come up? Is there a scent? Is there something that I see, something that I feel? And then the tremoring starts. What else is happening in my body in this moment? And so really, again, that lens of curiosity and wonder and allowing ourselves to sit with that discomfort, instead of pushing it away. These tremors are happening right now. I'm just going to let them happen for a little bit and see what I notice as this is happening. Instead of, I want this to stop immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that is that old pattern of avoidance. And again, it would be that gauging with the client, how long can they sit with it? Right? Because it could just be like, I'm just going to dip my toe into this right now and sit with it for a minute, and then I want to pull back. And that's okay.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that. And I feel like, too, if anyone is listening and they're having a nervous system reaction, this is great advice to take away and sort of apply to your own life. As a Reiki practitioner, from that perspective, is it the same, I guess is my question? Like, would you have approached it the same way as the awareness and the sitting with it?
Yeah. And also just like on an energetic level, right? I feel like Reiki is so reading people's energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so energetically, what's coming up from that for them? Is there an imbalance in their chakras? Where is this tremor, in their body? Where is it generated from?
Mm-hmm.
And when it shows up, what else is happening? Right? What else am I noticing? Is there tension? Is there stiffness?
That's a
Mm-hmm.
really good point. And just for our listeners who don't know what Reiki is, would you mind telling them a little bit about Reiki?
Yeah. And so Reiki is really energy. It's using my intuition to tune into someone else's energy. And so when I do Reiki, I go through each of the chakras and just notice if things are balanced and if they're not. And again, as you said, I do the same, very light touch and just really using, it's about connection, right? We're connecting energetically. And what am I noticing within the person that's sitting there?
Ooh, so that could potentially bring more insight to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you define it Reiki differently or?
Oh no.
Okay.
I love the way you defined it. Yeah, and something that and I don't remember where I heard this. Wish I did so I could give credit, but the way I like to describe it to clients is like your Reiki is your body is your car. The Reiki is your car battery, and I'm the jumper cables as
Yeah, I
the
like
Reiki
that.
practitioner. So
Yeah.
that's always fun. But yeah, it is a connecting, and it makes sense that you would look for where maybe that is what chakra that's coming from in her body. And so, just for you as a practitioner, how do all of your modalities fit together to form what is AIM True Coaching and your specific specialty?
So my slogan for my business is one breath at a time, right? And I really believe that, that's how you heal, one breath at a time. And so for me, all of it is connecting to your body, right? Connecting to your breath. Somatics is connecting to your body, and Reiki is also connecting to your body. It's connecting to that energy within.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, my ability to read energy really came out of trauma. I mean, in my childhood, my parents were grieving. And so I was really attuned to them and attuned to their energy so that I could adjust mine. But as a practitioner, it's not about adjusting mine. That has evolved into me reading people's energy to help them.
Mm,
Right. So it's really a gift that came out of trauma, but then has evolved as I've learned and grown and done the healing work myself.
mm-hmm.
and using, those skills all together to really help people and, help people who have trauma. And trauma really and truly is held within the body, right? And so understanding your breath can connect you to yourself and your body. Somatics, that is connecting you to yourself and your body.
And this might tie back into how you defined what it means to be human, but why is a strong connection to the body so important? Like, what does it do for us?
Well, I think trauma disconnects us. Trauma and stress disconnects us from the body. And so then we are just living on autopilot. We're not present. We're not engaged. We're not actively involved in our life. When we are present in our body, we're making decisions based on, what is best for us because we are listening to that wisdom within. We are following our intuition and we trust ourselves. That's a big one. With trauma, trust kind of disappears.
Yeah.
And so when you connect back to your body and you realize, wow, my body really is speaking to me, and it's so wise, then you develop that trust within yourself.
That is huge. Yeah. Well, and when you have trust in yourself, then you can be more authentically who you are, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift a little bit to the bigger picture because we've been talking about, I guess, just sort of individual journeys and individual examples, but right now in our world, things seem a little turbulent. We've got a lot of things going on. We've got a lot of good things going on too. But what do you suggest people do to take care of themselves from a trauma-informed perspective to minimize future trauma and future disconnection as we go through just some of these turbulent times?
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up, right? Because that is important to acknowledge that collectively, there is trauma in the world, right? And there is that ripple effect, but there is also the ripple effect of healing, right? And so when we do the healing work, we spread that to other people as well, especially when we talk about parents, right? Yes, trauma is generational, but so is healing. And so when we do the healing work, we encourage and inspire others to do it as well. So that's a big thing. And really, again, it comes back to what works for you. My way of healing may not be the same way as another person's way of healing. And so it's really, going inward. What makes me feel present? What makes me feel grounded? How am I able to engage? I love being outside. For me, that works. I love being near the water. Those are things that I know are good for me. I love going for a run. For me, that is that mobilization. I can get out that stress. But some other people may hate running, right? And so it's really learning to listen to yourself.
Is there a way to avoid being traumatized in general?
Mhm. I would say, I host a space on Twitter every week with Dr. Bob Bear, and he says everybody has trauma, right?
Okay.
We, as humans, we are all going to have experiences, right? And some of those experiences are going to be positive and some not so positive, right? And what lands as trauma for one person may not be traumatic for another. There's so much of how much support do you have?
Mm.
Because trauma isn't just what happened, it's also what didn't happen, what could have happened, and the connection and support you have around you. And so we can't completely, avoid trauma in our lives. But I think as parents, as friends, as someone who's in a relationship with someone, partners, we can be there for people and be connected and offer that sense of community, which I think lessens the impact of trauma.
Yeah. Excellent point. So thank you for that. And Amy, I've loved our conversation. I always love talking to you. And I just want to ask you real quick, is there anything we did not talk about that you feel is important to share?
I think the biggest thing is just finding what works for you.
Mm.
We all heal differently. And so really just listening to yourself and trying out different modalities, right? I didn't really realize that there were so many. I didn't even know what really Reiki was before,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so just allowing yourself to be open-minded and explore and know that, some of these things that maybe for a long time, I kind of looked at breathwork and Reiki as kind of like these woo things, right?
Yeah,
And then it's just realizing that, if it helps you heal, that's what matters. If it helps you in
absolutely.
your journey, great. Do what works for you.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely different for everybody. There's a different combination of modalities out there.
Yeah.
Amy, where can listeners find you and what you do?
So I do have a website, aimtruecoaching.com, and I am on Twitter, X, and I host a space there every week on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, and it's called Trauma, a Somatic Conversation. So I host that with Dr. Bob and Amy Duplay, and it's open for people to come and join. I also am on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Okay, well, guys, all of that will be in the show notes for you. So go check out Amy and what she's doing in the world. And just thank you for the work you're doing in the world and for spending some time here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And it was so lovely to connect with you again.
Thanks for tuning in. Check out more of our episodes here and at humanamplified.com. Remember to subscribe.